Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in Baltimore, and we're continuing our discussion, who now joins us again in the studio, with Fred Douglas Mason Jr. He's the president of the AFL-CIO, Maryland State and District of Columbia. He's held it for 4 terms, and he's been a member of about 4 or 5 of the major unions. Thanks for joining us again.
Absolutely.
All right, so we were chatting off camera. I'm going to just say it here. I think one of Sanders' biggest contributions in terms of democratizing both the Democratic Party and American politics is the way he's raised money. And I think it's important because, in many ways, but I had a breakfast meeting a few years ago with a major union leader and his DC political consultant. And I said, I don't understand why you unions have lots of money. You throw millions of dollars at these elections. You know, you have ground troops that go out and organize. You know, I don't think President Obama could have gotten elected if the unions had sat on their hands here. You know, if they hadn't gone out and done it. You know, most of these elections are very close, and you know, and I said, why aren't you fighting for leadership here and making real demands and saying if we don't get our demands, we're walking? Why don't you act like union leaders? And the answer from the political consultant, and the union leader was shaking his head, was, well, you know, it's the hedge fund guys got the money. It's the only way to fight the Republicans. You know, you need you need Wall Street's money. I mean, as long as your mindset's like that, you will never have, you know, union members, workers as an independent political force. You're always going to play second fiddle to some section of you know, Wall Street and so on, of the elites. So what Sanders has done that's so interesting, he's shown you can raise millions and millions of dollars if you inspire people and imagine that it's possible to actually have faith that people will, you know, if you jump, people will save you with $27 times however many people have done it. Isn't there a real problem? The union leaders just don't think in terms of mass mobilization anymore.
Well, it certainly is a challenge, and it's a challenge that is recognized. Excuse me. It's a challenge that the union movement, union leadership is coming to recognize, maybe somewhat belatedly, that we can't make the changes that we want representing 11% of the workers, because it means that there are 89% of the workers out there that we aren't talking to. So there's a big change process in the unions to reach out and talk with more
and they're missing
members.
They're missing such a moment of opportunity. All these young people that have gotten excited about Sanders' candidacy, many of whom are young workers, they see most of the unions as they've just joined with Hillary and the establishment. The union movement isn't seen as like being on the front lines of fighting for change. The union is back in the, you know, the corporate Democrats.
Yeah, that view is certainly out there, and part of the change that has to occur is how do we change ourselves? One of the things that I suggest, and I recognize the criticisms as being valid, but what I flip it around and say, what would the world look like if there were not unions? What would America look like? Even if they're weak unions, even if the union movement is weak, what would America look like if the union wasn't there? Workers are under attack in the United States of America. Corporate greed is rampant. You know, we see a company like Verizon that has made, $22 billion in profit, and they still want to gut the workers that have helped to become a great company. And I applaud the CWA and the IBEW for having the courage, to take on major battles, major companies, nationwide. And we haven't seen a lot of that.
Yeah, and that's, in fact, one of the CWA communication workers, one of the unions that has backed Sanders. And I'm not here to kind of promote Sanders in a sense, but there's a moment here of all this movement and young people coming up, CWA being an exception.
Right.
And the unions are seen as you said in the first segment, you're fighting against Democratic state legislature in Maryland that's, wants to pass pro-corporate legislation.
Yeah, and that's America. America has not been about the empowerment of workers. It doesn't want workers to have a voice at the workplace. We've had to fight and scratch and win that at every single step. Every time we win it, on one hand, seems like we lose it on another. The Koch brothers and their buddies, they've managed to now pass right-to-work legislation in, about 26 states. Their aim is to pass it in enough states where they can make right to work the law of the land.
And just for people that don't know, right to work, if I have it correctly, usually means you don't have to pay union dues or be a member of a union, even in places that have a union. And it's a way to try to break down unionization.
Right, by draining the resources from unions. They're the same people, on one hand, that engage in activity to disenfranchise voters. They come up with all kinds of schemes, birth certificate, this, that. And so you have that on one hand, and then on the other hand, you have Democrats that just crunch the numbers for the super voters and don't engage in massive voter registration programs to engage more people.
And by super voters, I know you mean voters are trustworthy, they're going to come out and they're going to vote with the Democratic machine more or less.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So a lot of people feel left out. We fought in Maryland, and unions were a part of it, to re-enfranchise formerly incarcerated people, because seemingly folks didn't care about them. And that made it possible for about 40,000 more folks. But that was a years-long fight. I engaged that fight when Glendening was governor.
In a legislature that's majority Democrats.
Yes, in a legislature that's majority Democrat. They will find a reason to disenfranchise people. So you have the Republicans on the one hand, and very open and very crass about the way that they talk about disenfranchising people. And then on the other hand, it seems like the other party just does nothing and thinks that it's okay. I think that what we are seeing, particularly with young people, that they are not caught up in that, and I applaud them for that. I applaud them, for their purity.
Okay, let's switch topics here. Why is Donald Trump having a significant amount of influence amongst a certain fairly significant section of American workers?
George Wallace had quite a bit of influence.
Yeah, in Maryland, he did one of the states he did best in.
Yes, yeah, and we have all these things that are oftentimes hidden. We call it dog whistle politics, where you learn how to speak in code, and race and sex and gender. Those are code words, and Trump is a master of that. You pick people that are suffering, whether they're black or white, but in most cases, the dog whistle is for white folks that do have, that for centuries have been told and educated that at least you might be doing bad, but you're not doing as bad as you do. You're not the black person. Yeah. Who was it? Nixon and the Bush. The welfare queens. You work hard every day and you have to eat hamburger, and they don't work and they eating steak. All of that kind of stuff. It's the Mexicans. It's always the other.
But let me go after unions again here.
Go ahead.
Well, that's all true. And we know Trump or someone like a Trump is always going to be playing those cards. why aren't the unions doing more to educate sections of the white working class that fall for this crap?
Well, and again,
I say that because it isn't the unions. Who?
and again,
Because no one else has the resources.
I am one of 51 state Fed presidents. I happen to represent 350,000 union members in Maryland and D.C., the majority of whom are white.
What's the percentage?
It's about almost 60% white. And so I've been elected 4 times. I came in speaking the truth. I came in recognizing that race was a problem in America and that if we talk about it, we can probably make some inroads.
So a majority white unions are electing a black president
Right.
of the AFL-CIO.
Right, and I talk about the situation, I talk about the disparities and how they manifested themselves in Western Maryland. Because when you look at the social and economic indicators, white folks, and majority white, in Allegheny County, Garrett County, where you have about maybe 5% African-American population, the socioeconomic indicators are pretty much like Baltimore City and Wacomico County, right? That when their kids want to go to college, they can't say, well, you know, I come from, I come from a county where the income level is such and such.
Ironically, a lot of those places, the only jobs are prison. They can work as prison guards.
Right, at least they're not them black prisoners. Yeah, so so a lot of folks, at least in Maryland, are having those discussions. I can talk about race. We were on the front lines. We were on the front lines in passing the DREAM Act in the state of Maryland. The unions were out there. The Maryland State and DC AFL-CIO was on the front line, took on all those folks that were saying that that is not a union issue. And our position and the members in Maryland supported that because we talked about those issues. We put the issues out there. We talk about race. We have to deal with this whole question, the Mexicans are coming in, taking jobs. Those are issues that leaders have to take head on. And so if the enemy is not the Mexicans, who is the enemy? And I suggest that the enemy is corporate America. That there are millions and billions of dollars that they get from raping the working class. They would do it whether you're black, white, brown, yellow, or whatever. And the only way that we can overcome that is by building a sustainable populist movement in this country. And it has to be more than every 4 years because workers get tired of that. Union members tell me sometimes, I'm glad we're talking about politics year round and not just every 4 years. Workers get tired of that are not in unions. All of a sudden, for the past 4 months, the TV stations have made record millions of dollars because now politicians want to talk about politics. They want to talk about conditions, but they only want to do it in 10 and 15-second sound bites. They don't want to take that money and invest it in sound educational programs. And that's what we need. So I can't speak for the union movement per se. I can speak about the changes that I believe that this union movement in Maryland and District of Columbia has been a part of, and we are proud of those. And we challenge the Democratic Party on that. We take up the hard issues within the union. I've been accused, folks will say, well, Fred cares too much about these social issues. But workers' lives don't begin and end at the workplace. And so I encourage members that we should have a union position on everything. Everybody may not become president of their national or president of their state fed, but if you believe that workers should have a say-so in where the speed bump goes, where the stop sign goes, you can do that by organizing in your community. And I believe that that is the kind of mindset that we have to put more energy in. I shared with you earlier, we don't give money to politicians, have not spent a dime in 16 years, not even buying a ticket, because some people think that it's very important to be able to rub shoulders, with, with an elected official and call them a friend. Well, a friend, they're good. It's good to have friends. But I believe that there's a war going on in America on workers, and that what we need are working class warriors. So that becomes a question for me, where politicians stand.
Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.